You know, uh, you know that specific, slightly terrifying silence that happens in a house right around 7 p.m.?
Oh, yeah. The suspicious silence. I know it very well.
The suspicious silence, exactly.
Yeah.
You're in the kitchen, you're maybe scrubbing a pan, and suddenly it hits you that you haven't heard a single peep.
Uh.
Not a footstep, not a crash from the living room in like 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And your heart just stops for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So you walk in, and what do you see?
You see the glow.
The glow, that pale blue zombie light. Everyone, the kids, your partner, heck, sometimes even the dog, if the TV is on, is just totally bathed in it. They're physically in the room, sure, but they aren't actually there. They've been abducted by the rectangle.
Mm-hmm. It's a scene playing out in millions of living rooms right at this very moment. It is basically the defining tableau of the modern family.
Yeah, and you have this immediate moment of panic, right? You stand there and think, man, I am losing my children to the algorithm. You feel this immense, crushing guilt. But then, and here is the kicker, the very next morning, it's 7 a.m., you're frantically trying to pack lunches, the baby is screaming, you're literally burning the toast, and what do? You just hand the toddler the iPad so you can survive the next 20 minutes.
Right, because it is the ultimate paradox of modern parenting. We totally resent the digital babysitter, but we employ it anyway. We have to. It's the path of least resistance.
Exactly. And that is the core conflict we are stepping into today for this deep dive. It is the single biggest source of friction, guilt, and just utter confusion for parents and educators right now. It's the ultimate battle of green time versus screen time.
And before people start rolling their eyes thinking this is going to be an hour of us just telling them to throw their smartphones in the river and go live in a yurt, it's not that. We aren't doing the whole technology is evil sermon.
No, absolutely not, because we actually read the source material you brought today, and it's massive. We've got this giant stack of pediatric journals, we've got toolkit guides from the Children in Nature Network, we've got data from library associations. And the story that all this research tells is so much more nuanced than just screen's bad, tree's good.
It really is. The core theme we are exploring today is something very specific. In the research, it's often referred to as the healing power of nature. But there is a specific term in our source material, a Polish phrase, actually, that really beautifully captures the essence of what we're talking about. Lesnica moc natury.
Lesnica moc natury. The healing power of nature.
Correct. And while it sounds almost poetic, like something you'd see printed on an inspirational poster, our mission today is to show you the hard empirical science behind it. We're going to look at how nature acts as a physiological buffer, almost like a chemical neutralizer, against the anxiety, the depression, and the cognitive fatigue that digital overload creates in kids and teens.
So we're going to really diagnose the problem first, and it's way deeper than just eye strain or bad posture. And then we're going to walk through this massive toolkit of solutions. We're talking about everything from mud kitchens for toddlers to high-stakes risk-taking for teens.
Yeah, we're going to explore why getting your hands dirty isn't just play, it's literally an immune system booster. We're going to look at why simply looking at a far-off horizon physically changes the shape of your eyeball. And we're going to answer the big question. Can a walk in the woods actually undo the damage of a 3-hour gaming binge?
That is the question I desperately need answered. Because if there's an antidote out there, I want to know the exact dosage.
Well, then let's dive in.
Okay, let's start with the diagnosis. When I read the headlines, or even, when I talk to other parents at school drop-off, the fear is so palpable. But it's also really vague. We say screens are rotting their brains, but what is actually happening physiologically? Is it the pixels? Is it radiation? What does the science actually say?
This is where we really need to introduce the foundational concept of this entire discussion. In the literature, it's called the displacement hypothesis.
Okay, let's unpack that. Displacement.
So for a really long time, researchers focused heavily on the content itself. They asked, was the video game violent? Was the social media post cyberbullying? And that stuff matters, of course it does. But the displacement hypothesis suggests that the primary harm of screen time isn't necessarily about what is on the screen, it's about the sheer math of time.
Because time is a zero-sum game.
Exactly. There are only 24 hours in the bucket. If a child, let's say a teenager, is spending 9 hours a day on screens, which is actually the current average right now.
Wait, pause. Just 9 hours?
Eh?
That is a full-time job plus a lunch break?
It is. It's staggering. And if you add in, hopefully, 8 hours of sleep, that leaves just 7 hours. For school, for eating, for basic hygiene, for talking to their parents, for literally just staring at the ceiling and daydreaming.
So the screen is just crowding out actual life.
That is the displacement. The harm comes from what the screen prevents you from doing. It prevents you from moving your body. It prevents you from sleeping properly. It prevents face-to-face interaction. And crucially, it prevents you from interacting with the 3D physical world.
Why is that 3D interaction so incredibly important? I mean, a digital simulation is pretty darn good these days. You can build entire cities in Minecraft.
It's good visually, but it's frictionless. When you interact with the real world, it pushes back at you. If you stack wooden blocks too high, gravity makes them fall. If you grab a cat too hard, it scratches you. If you go outside in November, it might be cold. You have to physically and emotionally regulate your response. You have to deal with real-time frustration.
And a screen never pushes back.
Never. You swipe, it smoothly moves. You tap, it instantly opens. The entire interface is explicitly designed to be frictionless to keep you engaged. So we are inadvertently raising a generation with incredible thumb dexterity, but potentially very, very low frustration tolerance. Because the world they live in, for 9 hours a day, never tells them no.
Wow. That really connects to the longitudinal study you flagged from Christakis and colleagues. This was from 2010, so this isn't some brand new panicked post-pandemic science. This is established baseline data.
Right. Christakis is an absolute heavyweight in this field. They looked at early exposure specifically in children under age 3, and they found that for every single hour of television watched daily at that young age, there were significant, measurable increases in attention problems by the time that child hit age 7.
That's a 4-year lag, so you don't even see the damage immediately. You think they're fine at age 2.
You might not see it at all initially, but the neural wiring is being set. If the developing brain gets used to the rapid-fire editing of a cartoon cut, zoom, flash, loud noise, the real world, which is inherently slow and requires sustained, quiet attention, feels intolerably boring. The child literally hasn't practiced the neurological skill of paying attention to something that isn't actively dancing and flashing in front of them.
That is honestly terrifying. But the study that really made me wince, and I think literally every parent listening to this is going to hate this one, was the German study, the Screen-Free Till 3 research.
Ah, yes. The technoference study.
Technoference. It sounds like a bad sci-fi movie from the 90s, but it's actually just our living rooms.
This study was fascinating because it flipped the camera around. It didn't just look at what the kids were doing, it looked at the parents. It measured parental screen use in the immediate presence of their infants.
So this is me checking my email while I'm holding the bottle and feeding the baby.
Exactly, or scrolling through Instagram while you're pushing the stroller through the park. And they found that high levels of parental screen use directly correlated with slower motor and social emotional development in the children.
Okay, I have to play the devil's advocate here for a second. How does me silently looking at my phone hurt my baby's motor skills? I'm not tying their shoelaces together. I'm just distracted.
It comes down to a developmental concept called the serve and return loop. This is the fundamental building block of human neurodevelopment. The blend serves, they coo, they point at a bird, they make a funny face. Biologically, the parent is wired to return that serve to look at them, smile, speak back, acknowledge the bird. That tiny micro-interaction builds neural pathways.
It's like a tennis match for the brain.
It is, but when you are staring down at your phone, you miss the serve, the baby coos and looks up and they just see its chin, or the back of an iPhone case. The loop is totally broken.
And if that happens enough times over weeks and months?
The baby stops serving. They inherently learn that their voice and their actions don't impact the world around them. They become more passive. And socially, they aren't getting the constant facial cues they desperately need to learn empathy and emotional regulation. You are essentially blank-facing your own child.
Man, that is heavy. That is really heavy to think about.
It is, and physically the impacts are just as stark in the literature. Because of the displacement of outdoor time, we are seeing a massive global rise in myopia, nearsightedness.
Because they aren't looking out at the horizon enough.
Exactly. The human eye is a muscle. It physically needs to focus at a distance to develop its shape properly. If everything you look at all day is exactly 12 inches from your face, the eye elongates. It structurally adapts to the near field. We are physically changing the shape of our children's eyeballs.
And then, of course, there's the sleep disruption from the blue light, which we all know about but still ignore.
Which directly leads to the mental health crisis. Our sources were completely unambiguous about this link. High recreational screen time is strongly, undeniably correlated with increased anxiety, depression, and profound social isolation. It's that instant gratification loop clashing with the patience required by the real world. If your brain is wired for the speed of TikTok, the normal meandering pace of everyday life literally feels like anxiety.
Okay, I think we have sufficiently terrified everyone listening. We understand the diagnosis. The displacement hypothesis means we are starving our kids of reality. Technoference means we are starving them of connection. So now, let's pivot to the hope. Let's talk about Lesnitz Mach Nature.
The healing power of nature.
Right. Is this just a nice romantic idea? Or is there an actual physiological mechanism here? How does a tree fix what an iPad broke?
It's not magic at all. It's pure neurology. To understand this, we have to talk about something called attention restoration theory.
Okay, let's get technical. Break that down for us.
So, cognitive researchers distinguish between two distinct types of attention. First, you have directed attention. This is what you use when you are actively working on a complex spreadsheet or navigating heavy traffic or, ironically, trying to filter out a dozen pop-up distractions on a screen.
It's the laser focus. It's highly effortful.
It is incredibly effortful. It burns literal glucose in the brain. It requires you to actively inhibit everything else going on around you. And like any muscle, it heavily fatigues. When your directed attention tank runs on empty, you get cranky, you can't focus, you snap at people, you make bad impulsive decisions. You are cognitively depleted.
That perfectly describes the feeling I have at roughly 4 p.m. every single Tuesday.
Precisely. Now, to recharge that specific cognitive tank, you can't just sleep. You actually need to engage the second type of attention, which is involuntary attention, or, as the environmental psychologists like to call it, soft fascination.
Soft fascination. I absolutely love that term. It sounds like the title of a smooth jazz album.
It really does, doesn't it? But it perfectly describes what happens neurologically when you are immersed in nature. Think about walking through a quiet forest. You are paying attention, you see the leaves moving in the wind, you hear a bird call, you watch the clouds drift, but you aren't forcing yourself to focus on any of it.
It just sort of happens naturally. The environment gently captures you.
Exactly. It captures your attention without demanding it. It allows the directed attention part of your brain, the part that's been working so hard all day, to completely go offline and rest. Nature is quite literally a cognitive charging station.
And compare that to what a screen does.
A screen is hard fascination. It grabs your attention aggressively, flashing lights, red notification badges, sudden audio cuts. It constantly demands active engagement, so it doesn't restore you at all. It drains that tank even further.
So when we tell parents to prioritize green time, we aren't just saying, hey, go have fun outside. We are structurally saying, go restore your child's cognitive architecture.
Yes, and this directly leads us to the buffering effect. This was a massive key finding in the Sugiyama et al. Study from 2023. And frankly, this is the study that should give every overwhelmed parent listening a huge sigh of hope.
Tell me about this buffer. How does it work?
They found that exposure to nature can actually mitigate the neurodevelopmental damage of screen time. They looked at a large cohort of kids who had very high screen use, lots of TV, lots of intensive gaming. But they found that if those same high-screen kids also had high levels of outdoor green play, their negative neurodevelopmental outcomes were significantly lessened.
Wait, so the dirt literally cancels out the pixels?
To a very measurable degree, yes. It buffers the physiological impact. It strongly suggests that you don't have to be a perfect parent. You don't have to ban screens entirely and live off the grid. But you do have to balance the equation. If you are going to expose them to the toxin, you have to provide the antidote.
That is a huge relief. Because banning screens entirely is, well, it's a nice utopian idea, but we live in the real world. Kids need to learn digital literacy.
It's not realistic at all, but intentionally increasing green time is totally realistic. And it works for young adults too, not just toddlers. There was that college study in our stack from Deo, Wallace, and Kidwell. They found that green time served as a massive protective factor against severe stress and depression in university students.
I want to touch on one more psychological concept before we get to the practical toolkit, the concept of awe. This came from the Chinese study by Wang and colleagues from 2024.
Oh, this is incredibly powerful stuff. They were specifically looking at severe internet addiction in adolescents, kids who were compulsively unhealthily online. And they found that experiencing moments of awe in nature acted as a direct, measurable antidote to that addiction.
Define awe for us in this scientific context. What does that mean?
It's that profound feeling you get when you stand on the edge of the Grand Canyon for the first time, or when you look straight up the trunk of a giant redwood tree, or seeing the Milky Way clearly on a dark night. It's the deep psychological sense of being physically small in the presence of something vast and ancient.
It makes you feel totally insignificant, but in a really comforting good way.
Exactly. It aggressively shrinks the ego. Think about it. Social media is entirely about the ego. It's me, my likes, my followers, my curated image, my hot take. Nature is the exact opposite of that. It tells you very quietly that you are just a tiny, temporary part of a massive, beautiful, complex system. That perspective shift actually reduces the psychological compulsion to be online. It breaks the exhausting loop of self-reference.
It connects you to something so much bigger than your digital feed.
Correct. Les Nitsamoknatri isn't just about relaxation, it's about deep psychological recalibration.
Okay, I am completely sold on the science. I'm ready to recalibrate my whole family. But let's get practical. Say I live in the dense suburbs or maybe a high-rise apartment. I don't live next to Yosemite National Park. How do we actually do this on a Tuesday? Let's open the toolkit.
We have a lot of fantastic practical strategies here, so let's break it down chronologically by age group, starting with the little ones. Early childhood.
The messy years.
The very messy years. And the research explicitly says, lean hard into the mess. The absolute MVP of this age category is the mud kitchen.
I have seen these all over Pinterest. Some of them look nicer than my actual indoor kitchen. They've got granite countertops, cedar cabinetry, running water. Do you need to build that?
Absolutely not. In fact, the experts argue that if you make it too polished and fancy, you actually ruin the developmental benefit. The best mud kitchen is scavenged and raw. You want old, dented pots, rusty pans, a broken colander, some wooden spoons, and literally just a patch of dirt and a hose.
But why mud specifically? Aside from guaranteeing a massive laundry bill, what is the actual cognitive benefit?
Mud is the ultimate open-ended toy.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning it has no defined, programmed purpose. If you give a child a plastic toy car, it's a car. It drives on the floor. The play script is already written for them by the manufacturer. But if you give a child a pot of wet mud, what is it?
It could be soup.
It's soup. Or it's cement for a fortress. Or it's a chocolate birthday cake. Or it's a magic witch's potion. The child has to exert intense cognitive effort to impose their imagination onto the raw material. The brain has to do the heavy lifting, and that builds deep executive function.
Plus the sheer sensory input of it all.
Huge sensory input. The gritty texture, the cold temperature, the squelching sound, the earthy smell. We talked earlier about how screens are frictionless, right? Mud is entirely friction. It forcefully grounds the child back into their physical body.
And I saw a fascinating note in the pediatric stack about the immune system connection here.
Yes, the hygiene hypothesis. There is a rapidly growing body of evidence showing that early, regular exposure to the highly diverse bacteria found in normal backyard soil actually trains the developing immune system to properly regulate itself. It potentially reduces the risk of severe allergies and autoimmune issues later in life. So the dirt is literally functioning as preventative medicine.
Leisnicha mochnatri in a very literal, microscopic sense. But okay, what if I don't have a yard at all? What if I'm in a third floor walk-up in the city?
Then you strategically bring the nature inside. The library toolkits and the Children in Nature Network highly suggest sensory bins and sensory bottles for indoor spaces.
Talk to me about the bottles. How do you make those?
Calm down bottles are fantastic and cheap. You just take an empty clear plastic bottle, fill it mostly with water, add a bunch of glitter, and then drop in some small nature items you collected on a walk. Tiny shells, smooth pebbles, maybe a small pine cone or a twig, and then you super glue the lid shut so it doesn't leak.
And then what? They just look at it.
You shake it up vigorously, and then you just sit and watch it settle. It sounds overly simple, but actively watching the glitter and the sand slowly, randomly drift to the bottom is a perfect visual representation of the mind settling down. It reliably induces that state of soft fascination we talked about earlier.
It's basically a homemade snow globe for toddler anxiety.
It is. And another great indoor one for toddlers is fabric exploration boxes. You just gather scraps of vastly different natural textures, rough burlap, smooth silk, fuzzy wool, thick velvet, just letting them sit and feel the extreme differences. It provides incredibly rich tactile data for a rapidly developing sensory cortex.
Let's talk about gardening, because I personally kill almost every houseplant I touch, but the sources say this is absolutely crucial for young kids.
It is crucial, and you really don't have to be a master botanist to pull it off. The key for kids is to make the gardening directly relevant to their interests. Don't just plant a row of decorative hostas and expect them to care. You plant a pizza garden.
A pizza garden. I love the branding on that.
It works perfectly. You sit the kid down and ask, What goes on your favorite pizza? Tomatoes, oregano, basil, bell peppers. Okay, great. Let's go plant exactly those seeds.
So they see the literal ingredients of their favorite food coming out of the dirt.
They see the direct, undeniable connection between the earth and their plate. And there is a statistic in the research here that is just wild. Children are significantly more likely to voluntarily eat vegetables that they have grown themselves.
It's the IKEA effect. I spent hours building this bookshelf, so I love it, even if it's wobbly. I grew this tomato, so I'm going to eat it.
Exactly. If that kid painstakingly watered a cherry tomato plant every morning for 3 months, they're absolutely going to eat that cherry tomato. It gives them powerful agency over their own nutrition.
And what about for those small apartment spaces again?
Terrariums. You create a tiny living world inside a large mason jar or an old pickle jar. Put in some gravel, a little soil, a piece of green moss, a tiny fern. It becomes a completely self-contained ecosystem. If you seal it, they can literally watch the water cycle happen inside the jar. They see the condensation form on the glass and then the precipitation drip down. It's a 3D science lesson sitting right on their bookshelf.
All right, moving up the age bracket. School-age kids, say 7 to 12 years old. This is where I feel like it gets really tricky because the screens are now intensely social. Their friends are hanging out on Roblox. Their schoolwork is all managed on a Chromebook.
This is exactly where the strategy has to evolve. You have to pivot from mere play to STEM, or STEAM, adding the arts in. We need to intentionally appeal to their growing intellectual curiosity and desire to figure out how things work.
So the sources suggest bringing science into the backyard.
Yes, the toolkits list some absolute classics, and honestly, they are classics for a very good reason. Take the celery experiment.
Remind me of the setup for that one.
It's so simple. You just take a fresh stalk of leafy celery, put it in a clear glass of water, and drop in a heavy amount of red or blue food coloring. And then you wait.
The waiting is the hardest part for a kid used to YouTube Shorts.
But the waiting is the entire point. Over the course of a few hours or overnight, you physically see the dyed water travel up the microscopic tubes in the stalk and turn the green leaves bright red. It perfectly visualizes capillary action in plants. Now, sure, you can watch a slick 10-second animated diagram of capillary action on an iPad, but watching it happen in real, slow time on your kitchen counter, that permanently sticks in the brain.
And the solar oven experiment. I was reading that section, and I thought, I want to do this weekend.
Oh, the solar oven is brilliant for a hot, sunny day. You take an empty pizza box, line the inside with aluminum foil to reflect the light, use some plastic wrap over the opening to trap the heat, and angle the lid. You are literally making a greenhouse trap for the sun's thermal energy. And then you put a raw s'more inside.
And it takes, what, an hour to melt the chocolate?
Depends entirely on the cloud cover and the sun angle. It might take 2 hours. But think about the massive cognitive payoff there. You are teaching a 9-year-old how to harness the invisible radiation of a star that is 93 million miles away just to melt a marshmallow. That is a profoundly powerful concept. And again, it forces patience. As the book says, you cannot microwave nature.
You cannot microwave nature. That is a bumper sticker waiting to happen. But let's be real for a second. What about the exhausted parents who are listening to us right now and thinking, guys, I work 50 hours a week. I do not have the bandwidth to curate a bespoke backyard science curriculum.
I completely hear you, and it is a valid concern. And the educational market has thankfully responded to this exact problem. Our sources brought up the immense value of subscription boxes, things like KiwiCo, Green Kid Crafts, or Radish Kids.
Is that cheating, though? Just buying a pre-made box?
Not at all. Think of it as curated unplugging. It completely removes the preparation friction for the parent. You don't have to spend 3 hours scouring Pinterest and making a trip to the craft store. The box just magically arrives once a month with all the exact materials and instructions right there.
And Radish Kids specifically focuses on cooking, right?
Yes, culinary skills. And the sources emphasize that we really should view cooking as a primary screen-free STEM activity. It involves deep chemistry, observing heat reactions and emulsion. It involves practical math, dealing with fractions, doubling recipes, measuring volumes, and crucially, it is a vital life skill. If you can successfully get your kid off the screen for an hour to learn how to bake a loaf of bread from scratch, you have definitively won the afternoon.
Let's shift to the creative art side of things for this age group. Nature journaling was mentioned heavily.
This is honestly one of my absolute favorites because it rigorously trains observational skills. If you just tell a kid, hey, draw a bird, they will almost always draw a generic V shape in the sky or a basic stick figure. But if you hand them a journal and say, draw that specific blue jay sitting on that specific branch, they have to really look. They have to observe the curve of the beak, the exact pattern of the feathers, the way it grips the wood. They have to slow down.
It turns passive looking into active seeing.
Exactly. And another great art project is sun art using cyanotype paper. It's this special photosensitive paper. You go on a nature walk, collect interesting ferns, distinct leaves, or patterned flowers. You place them on the paper, leave it in the bright sun for a few minutes, and then rinse it in water. It creates this stunning, permanent white silhouette against a deep blue background. It's photography without using a camera or a screen. It captures a literal shadow. It feels magical to a kid, but it's pure photochemistry.
Okay, now we have to face the ultimate test.
Oh.
We reached the boss level of parenting. Teenagers.
The teen challenge. It requires a completely different playbook.
Because you obviously cannot tell a 15-year-old to go outside and make a mud pie. They will literally laugh in your face, and then they will immediately tweet about how out of touch you are.
Correct. The primary developmental currency for teenagers is no longer play. The currency driving their brain is autonomy, mastery, identity, and deep social connection. If you just take away their smartphone, you aren't just taking a toy, you are severing their primary social lifeline to their peers. You have to replace that massive void with something of equally high value.
So we need to introduce high-value hobbies.
Right. Let's take photography as a bridge. Most teens are already taking dozens of photos every day, but they are almost exclusively taking filtered selfies. They are constantly turning the camera back on themselves, analyzing their own flaws.
Or taking pictures of their iced coffee.
True. But if you give them a dedicated, real camera, like an old DSLR, or even just challenge them to use their phone, but strictly locked in airplane mode so notifications can't pop up, and you challenge them to photograph the outside world, it dramatically shifts their focus outward. They start learning about composition, the golden hour lighting, macro photography of weird insects. It stops being about ego and becomes a genuine art form. It becomes about mastery.
I am a photographer. That's a cool identity for a teen to adopt.
Exactly. Right now, I am a gamer is a very sticky identity. You need to proactively offer a compelling, competing identity. I am a musician. I am a woodworker. I am a rock climber.
Woodworking is an interesting one because it requires such intense, unbroken focus. You literally cannot scroll TikTok while you are feeding a board through a table saw.
Not if you want to keep all 10 fingers. No. And that danger is actually the point. It demands complete immersive flow state. And at the end of the weekend, you have built a physical bookshelf. You have tangible, heavy proof of your own competence. Think about it. A high score in a video game completely vanishes the second you turn off the console. But a bookshelf you built with your own hands, that sits in your room for years.
The sources also brought up volunteering for teens. I honestly hadn't naturally connected volunteering to green time, but the way they explain it, it makes total sense.
It's a huge component. Working manually at a community garden, walking rescue dogs at the local animal shelter, doing a Saturday morning beach cleanup. It forces sustained face-to-face interaction with adults and peers outside their high school bubble. It builds deep cognitive empathy, and most importantly, gives the teenager a genuine sense of purpose. I'm fundamentally useful to my community. That feeling is an incredibly powerful, natural drug for a developing adolescent brain.
And the final strategy for teens in the toolkit: adventure and risk.
This is critical, and we often get this wrong today. Over the last few decades, we have heavily sanitized childhood. We've made playgrounds incredibly safe, which is good for preventing broken bones, but we've inadvertently removed the essential element of risk that actually builds psychological resilience.
The YMCA camp data that was cited in the notes was really eye-opening regarding this.
They studied what happens when teens engage in controlled risk. Things like high ropes courses, outdoor rock climbing, multi-day wilderness camping. When you are strapped in and climbing a 50-foot rock wall, the biological fear you feel is very real. Your palms literally sweat. Your heart rate spikes. You have to actively manage and conquer your own nervous system to keep moving upward.
Because you can't just hit a button to respawn if you slip.
You cannot respawn. Actions have immediate physical consequences. And when you finally pull yourself over the ledge at the top, the massive surge of confidence and pride you feel is real. It's visceral and earned. It builds a durable kind of core self-esteem that getting 100 likes on an Instagram post can never ever touch.
And for teens who might not be ready to scale a cliff, what about geocaching? That seems like a really smart bridge activity.
It is the perfect bridge. It actually utilizes the smartphone, specifically the GPS mapping, but it completely gamifies the physical outdoors. It's basically a massive global treasure hunt. You use the coordinates, but then you have to actually hike 2 miles into the woods, look under specific rocks, and climb over logs to find the hidden physical cache. It perfectly appeals to the quest and reward mechanic that makes video games so addictive, but the entire quest happens out in the dirt.
I want to spend a moment on institutional support because hearing all this, individual parents often feel like they are fighting this massive cultural battle entirely alone in their living rooms. But the research highlights that public libraries are really stepping up to the plate.
The Nature Smart Library movement is one of the most beautiful trends happening right now. We traditionally tend to think of libraries as just quiet warehouses for books, but they are rapidly evolving into dynamic community hubs for facilitating listening to mock nature.
They are lending out stuff that isn't books at all.
Exactly. Nature backpacks are a huge initiative. You can literally walk into your local branch and use your library card to check out a fully stocked backpack filled with high-quality birding binoculars, local field guides, magnifying glasses, and compasses.
That addresses a massive equity issue, too.
Yeah.
Good binoculars are expensive. Not every family has disposable income for outdoor gear.
Exactly. Not everyone can afford to drop $200 at an outdoor retailer just to see if their kid likes birdwatching. This completely democratizes access to nature exploration. Some rural libraries are even lending out fishing poles and tackle boxes. Some are lending out 4-person camping tents and sleeping bags.
And the seed libraries. I had never heard of this before reading the packet.
I absolutely love the seed library concept. You go in and you check out a small packet of heirloom seeds, say cherry tomatoes or giant sunflowers. You take them home, plant them in your yard or your window box, and you grow the plant. And then at the end of the season, if you are successful, you harvest some of the new seeds from your mature plant, put them in an envelope, and return them to the library for the next person to check out next spring.
It teaches the full biological life cycle. It's entirely circular and community-driven.
And story walks. Have you ever encountered one of these in a local park?
I have, actually.
Yeah.
It's where they take a popular children's picture book. They literally deconstruct it, laminate the individual pages to weatherproof them, and mount them on wooden stakes along a half-mile walking trail.
It's a brilliant fusion. In order to read the next page of the story, the toddler physically has to walk 20 or 30 feet down the trail. Turn the page literally means walk to the next tree. It forces physical movement and outdoor immersion while combining it with early literacy.
The Los Angeles Public Library was highlighted in the notes with some very specific cool programs. They host workshops on building tiny terrariums, exploring kelp forests virtually and physically.
And my personal favorite, DIY seed bombs.
You have to explain the seed bomb concept because it sounds mildly illegal.
It is a little bit subversive, which is why older kids and teens love it. You take a mixture of natural clay, some nutrient-rich compost, and a blend of native wildflower seeds. You roll it all together into a tight little ball about the size of a golf ball and let it dry. And then you take a walk through your neighborhood and you throw it into a neglected, ugly patch of dirt in an empty, vacant lot, a barren roadside strip, a cracked median.
It's literal guerrilla gardening.
Exactly. It perfectly appeals to that inherent teenage desire to be a little bit rebellious and break the rules, but it's entirely constructive rebellion. The rain eventually breaks down the clay, and next spring, that ugly vacant lot is suddenly covered in native poppies and wildflowers. You aren't making the world uglier with graffiti. You are secretly making it bloom.
That is so cool. Okay, so we have the diagnosis, we understand the cure, we have this massive age-appropriate toolkit. Now comes the absolute hardest part of this entire deep dive, implementation. How do we actually introduce this transition into our homes without causing a full-blown mutiny?
You start by calling a temporary ceasefire. You initiate a screen-free week.
Now, this is an official global initiative, right? Usually happens in early May.
Yes, the official one is in May, but you can declare one for your family anytime you need it. The absolute key here is the psychological framing. You are not sitting your kids down and saying screens are evil and they are banned forever because you are all hopelessly addicted. That creates instant defensive walls. You frame it as a scientific challenge. You say, we are going to run a family experiment. Let's do a total reset for just one single week as a team and carefully observe how we all feel.
It's framed as a temporary detox rather than a permanent punishment.
Exactly. It gives the central nervous system a chance to baseline. It allows the whole family to objectively evaluate their relationship with their devices. Now, the first 2 days will be incredibly rough. But usually, by day 3 or 4, the intense dopamine withdrawal wears off, the brain stops screaming for a quick hit, and the natural creativity finally kicks back in.
But to get to the magical day 4, parents have to survive the dreaded boredom threshold.
This is the absolute valley of death for modern parents. When the kid wanders into the kitchen on Saturday morning and whines, "I'm bored," we instantly panic. We feel this overwhelming guilt, like we are fundamentally failing our job as cruise directors and entertainers.
So to alleviate our own guilt and stop the whining, we just hand them the phone.
Right, it's a quick fix, but we desperately need to reframe what boredom actually is. Dr. Jennifer Casarella had a phenomenal quote in our research stack. Boredom is an emotion or signal that lets you know that you are doing something that doesn't give you satisfaction.
So it's not an emergency, it's just a biological signal.
It's a hunger pang, but it's a hunger pang for creativity and engagement. If you immediately fill that hunger with a junk food screen, you completely kill the creative impulse. If you just let the boredom sit there, if you can grit your teeth and tolerate the dramatic sighing and whining for 20 or 30 minutes, the child's brain will eventually snap into action to solve its own problem. It will invent a weird game. It will dig through the closet. It will literally just go outside and pick up a stick.
So we basically have to be willing to be the bad guys for half an hour and just let them suffer through being bored.
We absolutely have to hold the line. But we don't have to leave them completely adrift. We can subtly help them cross that threshold by using what educators call invitations to play.
What does an invitation to play actually look like in a living room?
It means you don't aggressively command them. You don't say, go in there and build a Lego tower right now. Instead, after they go to bed, you just strategically leave a basket of wooden blocks dumped out on the center of the rug. You leave the watercolors and heavy paper sitting open on the kitchen table. You make sure the water bucket next to the backyard mud kitchen is full.
Strewing things about implies that they are meant to be used.
Exactly. It drastically lowers the barrier to entry. And psychologically, it respects their autonomy. They feel like they organically discovered the activity on their own rather than being ordered to perform a chore by a parent.
And if a whole week feels impossible, the sources say to just start small.
Definitely. Don't go cold turkey on a random Tuesday if you don't have the energy to manage the fallout. Start with simple, mandatory 15-minute intervals. Implement a strict rule. Green time before screen time. You want to play an hour of Minecraft. Totally fine. But you have to complete 30 minutes of outside yard time first. No negotiations.
You literally have to earn your dopamine hit.
In a practical way, yes. But here is the absolute hardest pill to swallow in all the research we read. And I purposely saved this for the very end of our deep dive because I honestly didn't want people to get angry and turn us off in the first 10 minutes.
Oh boy. Lay it on me. What is the ultimate hard truth?
Parental modeling.
I knew it. I knew that was coming.
We cannot possibly expect our children to disconnect if we are constantly, chronically connected ourselves.
Yeah.
If we are anxiously checking work emails under the table during family dinner, if we are mindlessly scrolling Twitter while standing on the sidelines at their Saturday soccer game, we are loudly communicating to them that the glowing rectangle is vastly more important than the physical reality we are sharing.
We are total hypocrites. We tell them to go play outside while we sit on the couch looking at TikTok.
We are. We have to be the ones to actively model green time. We have to be the ones saying out loud, I am turning my phone off, putting it in this drawer, and I'm going out to weed the garden for 20 minutes. We have to visibly show them that adults value and require the real physical world too.
Because listen to mock nature absolutely applies to adults too.
It does. Look at us. We are just as stressed, just as sleep deprived, and just as cognitively depleted as the teens are. Our directed attention tanks are constantly empty. We desperately need that soft fascination just as much as a toddler does.
Before we wrap, there were a couple of really quick, specific activities in the notes that I just wanted to shout out because they sounded incredibly fun and easy to pull off. One was melting ice cream dough.
Yes, from that 150-plus screen-free activities book. It's an amazing sensory dough you make at home, usually just mixing basic cornstarch and hair conditioner. It flux up and feels exactly like a scoop of cold ice cream, but the friction of playing with it makes it literally melt in your hands as you mold it. It constantly changes physical state.
So again, it's that rich tactile feedback. It's basic physics happening right in the palm of your hand.
And for the evening hours, which are usually the prime danger zone for defaulting to the TV, they suggest flashlight tag in the yard.
High energy. Burns off the evening jitters before bed.
Exactly. Or, on a quieter night, just simple stargazing, taking a thick blanket into the backyard, laying flat on your back in the dark, and just quietly looking up at the sky together.
Inducing that feeling of awe.
Pure awe, reminding yourselves how massive the universe is.
Wow. So let's try to bring all of this home. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We've talked heavily about the displacement hypothesis, how the sheer volume of screen hours is silently crowding out actual physical living. We've talked about the deep neurological science of Lesnitsa Mach-Natri, how outdoor time creates a vital buffering effect against digital damage.
And I think the single biggest takeaway from all these pediatric journals and studies is that nature is absolutely not a luxury. It is not just a nice, optional aesthetic thing we do on a summer vacation. It is a fundamental biological nutrient.
A nutrient, like a vitamin.
Yes, exactly like a vitamin. For a rapidly developing human brain, complex 3D sensory input from the natural world is just as essential for proper structural growth as adequate protein or calcium. If you severely restrict or remove that input, you get severe developmental deficits. You get clinical anxiety. You get massive attention issues and myopia.
So this entire conversation isn't about being some anti-technology Luddite who hates progress. It's simply about acting as a responsible nutritionist for your child's brain architecture.
Exactly. You are balancing their cognitive diet. It's about intentionally building resilient, deeply empathetic, and highly focused human beings who can tolerate friction. That is the ultimate so what of this entire deep dive. It's not just about angrily reducing screen time minutes on an Apple dashboard. It's about raising capable, grounded humans.
And I just keep thinking about that final, really provocative thought you brought up when we were prepping for this, about the long-term future.
Right. It's a profound question. If we do not intentionally teach this next generation how to read the complex language of nature, to know how to read the changing shapes of the clouds, to identify the local plants, to feel the subtle shifts in the seasons, will they completely lose the ability to care for it?
Because connection has to precede conservation.
Precisely. If a child doesn't even know the name of the bird sitting in their own backyard, do they really care if its habitat is destroyed and it goes extinct? Probably not. We urgently need to help them fall deeply in love with the physical world, so they will ultimately want to protect it when it's their turn to be in charge.
Lesnitsa Mach-Natri, the healing power of nature. It is literally waiting right outside the front door for all of us.
It is. Just go turn the knob and find it.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today. Get outside, and we'll see you next time.